Hello, everyone, and welcome to the All Sports Betting Podcast, the football preview. I'm Kev. As ever, I've got Steve with me. Hi, Steve. How are you this weekend?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Kev. Had a busy week, pretty hot week as well. I'm not used to these hot conditions in Yorkshire, so a bit of a struggle for me. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm sure you're wondering what that yellow thing in the sky is up there, but it is the sunshine, and thankfully we've had plenty of it this week, so I'm pretty good myself. Looking forward to a decent weekend of football, albeit a curtailed one with the absence of English Football League. But there is a big game in England, the FA Cup final. Arsenal fans and Chelsea fans will be particularly interested in this, as it's them two that meet. Obviously, Chelsea are going for the domestic double. Arsenal are going to salvage a wreckage of a season. How do you see the cup final going?
Well, I'm not a big fan of betting in cups full stop, but in this particular final, I see it as Chelsea is clearly the better team. They've been the better side all season. In terms of matchups, I don't really see where Arsenal have a single edge, really. They did well to get to this final, didn't they? I don't think too many people expected them to beat Man City, but you know what City are like. They leave themselves too open, and Arsenal managed to take advantage of that in the semi-final, didn't they? Chelsea are far better drilled. There's a real focus about them. Even when they won the title last week, you hear stories about Conte's got them working on the training field even harder in anticipation of this final, and that's the way that Chelsea are run these days, Kev. I mean, they're 1.80 to win the game inside 90 minutes, and that's the way I see it going. I certainly think they'll lift the trophy at the end of the day. Potentially they might need a bit longer than 90 to do that. I don't know, but I just think there's a good chance they'll win it something like maybe 2-0. That's the sort of thing. Arsenal probably go hunting for goals too much, leave themselves exposed. Chelsea have just been a ruthless machine this year, and it just feels like that they're going to bring the double home. I don't see a final swan song for Wenger myself. How do you see it going?
I don't think this is the final swan song for Wenger, first and foremost. He'll be there next season. Of that, there's no doubt. I guess it's all about what kind of defence Arsenal can put out. Obviously, Laurent Koscielny decided to decapitate Enner Valencia last week and got his marching orders, which means he misses this game. And Gabriel went off on the stretcher, didn't he? And he's out for the game. And I believe Mustafi's going to be out as well. So that leaves Per Mertesacker and possibly Callum Chambers as centre-halves. So, the likes of Diego Costa, Eden Hazard and co should really enjoy a field day there. If that wasn't bad enough, I believe Petr Cech's injured and David Ospina's going to replace him between the sticks for the game. Not that that's a bad thing, but obviously Cech would be motivated to beat his old side, wouldn't he? So, Arsenal have got defensive issues, which kind of makes me think this is going to be a high-scoring cup final, Steve. The only way Arsenal can really compete in this game is if they attack. That's probably their strength anyway. Get the ball to Alexis Sanchez, Mesut Ozil, see if they can do anything. Chelsea have been conceding goals recently. Even Sunderland scored against them last week, and Sunderland never score goals. Okay, the title is already won, but even so, a man like Conte, who prides himself on clean sheets, wouldn't have been happy with that. He certainly wouldn't have been happy that a rank awful Watford side scored 3 against him in the game before. So all of a sudden, there are holes in that. Will John Terry play? Will he get a last run out at Wembley? Time will tell. If he does, what minute will he come off at? Has he decided? Who decides? Does anyone know? So lots of questions about the Chelsea backline. It'll be interesting to see. I, for one, don't think Terry will play, or at least I certainly don't think he'll start. Maybe if they're 5 up or something, he'll come on, have a clap with everyone, and then walk off again or whatever. But I just see both sides scoring in the game. I think Arsenal, they're going to have to score, aren't they? So I think they might kind of abandon that 3 at the back. They haven't got 3 centre-backs to play 3 at the back anyway. And maybe have a bit more of a go, get Welbeck on the field, something like that. So if I'm betting on the cup final, and I usually do have a little bet on it, to be fair, I'll probably go with a main bet of over 2.75 goals. And then maybe pick a first scorer out. Arsenal aren't expected to score, are they? But there's every chance that at some stage they might do. And who knows, Sanchez might be able to pull a few strings or something and be an unlikely first goal scorer.
So you pick for this game over 2.75. I think if I was to have a selection, it would simply just be straight Chelsea win. I just see them winning this cup. It might not be a complete cakewalk, but there's just something about Chelsea this year. I just think they're a far better side than Arsenal. Of the cup finals, funny things can happen, of course they can, but that would be my personal advice.
Absolutely, that's fair enough. I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. I think Chelsea will win the cup as well. Hopefully, from that point of view, they're doing it inside 90 minutes. Time will tell. I think we're both fairly confident that Chelsea will be lifting the trophy, even allowing for weird things like Wigan winning an FA Cup final a few years ago. So we'll put the cup final to bed. Hopefully, it's an entertaining watch for those that are going to watch it. And we'll head off to France, where the two words that have haunted me over the last couple of weeks have been League Two and playoffs. And that's exactly what we're witnessing on Saturday. You've got bets in both games. First of all, we'll start with Orleans against Paris FC. Talk us through that one.
Yeah, both these games have been played on Sunday, actually, Kev. Orleans against Paris FC. I had a strong suspicion heading into this tie that the Orleans would certainly prevail. They were the 18th place team in French League Two, but they had 4 points deducted, so it wasn't a true reflection of their total points. It was in the end. It was irrelevant in terms of league position, but I just feel if they hadn't had the deduction, they would have been far more motivated towards the end of the season, believing they could stay up automatically. The third place team in the national, Paris FC, and what you got to remember about that division is half of the teams are semi-pro. They're not all of them are fully professional, and Paris FC only got in early 50 points, which is not a lot. They had a staggering 26 out of 30 games finished under 2.5 goals. I've never seen anything quite like that before. Yet again, another under for them in midweek when they lost the first leg 1-0. The video assistant referee is using these ties, and he chalks off a goal on that occasion. But, I mean, Orleans in the end got the 1-0 win, and they were the better team. And Orleans have been terrible away from home this year. They've only won about 2 or 3 games in total. And for them to be so dominant in that particular fixture on the road, it just shows you how poor Paris FC are. And I think they'll put the national team to bed here. Paris FC have to attack, but they're not in the same classy level as Orleans. And I would imagine the home team will have enough chances to pick them off. Just simply going to back Orleans straight on the nose, just over even money. They don't have to win the game. Any draw, and they will retain their French League Two status. And so that's a slight concern. But even if it was sort of level going into the last 10 minutes, then Paris FC, they've got to fling everyone forward. There'll be enough chances. I just see Orleans as the better team in that particular one, Kev.
Yeah, fair enough. There's also a match with the aim of getting into League One. Obviously, last week saw an absolute crazy finish to the League Two season, didn't it? 6 different teams going for the title. Strasbourg, congratulations to them for winning the title, and well done to Amiens who gained promotion as well. And it's Troyes who forced to play this playoff against Lorient from Ligue 1. Are they going to be disappointed that they're playing in this match, or will they embrace it and have a real go against Lorient in this one?
Well, at full time last week, Troyes obviously thought they were promoted automatically, but Amiens' last kick of the season saw them in a 3rd position. So, I mean, in a way, you would kind of forgive them for being a bit downbeat heading into the first leg of this playoff, but they managed to score in injury time to win, to beat Lorient 2-1 in the first leg. Unbelievably, 40-year-old Benjamin Nive was the star man again. He grabbed the goal in injury time. As you know, Kev, I'm not a great fan of old football players who defy logic. But this guy, he has actually been one of the best players in the league, and he had one more moment of magic for them. But Lorient are definitely the better team. In a way, Troyes were very unlucky to end up playing them, because it looked like it could be Caen or Nancy or Bastia or even someone like Dijon. They would have had a much better chance of beating them. Lorient, the only reason they're actually down there in the table is because they were so crap before Christmas. Since the winter break, they've been quite good. They even beat Lyon 4-1 away from home. A few other good results. they're a much better team than Troyes, and obviously they've got to win this second leg to at least force extra time. I think they'll win it. We'll say 1.78 you can get on Lorient, and they should deliver the goods there. And I think this is an over 2.5 match as well. Whoever scores, the other team's got to respond, etc., etc. It should be an open game. The first leg was pretty open, and I think over 2.5 goals, about 1.85 you can get there. Looks to make sense. I would not be surprised if it ended 2-1 again, actually. It's certainly the sort of scoreline that I could see. Maybe 3-1 to Lorient. I think both teams probably will score in the game. And it could be a really close finish. If it does go to extra time, then anything could happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it went all the way to penalties to determine this final League One spot. Lorient are the sort of team they should be prevailing comfortably, but they find ways to shoot themselves in the foot too often, usually with a defensive mistake. I mean, conceding an injury time sums them up, really, this season. They should never have conceded that goal at all. They should have just held on for the 1-1, played the percentage game, go back home with a 1-1 draw, and they were in a great position. But they went for the second goal, which was, I think, was a daft decision at that point in time. They'd just got back level. There's no need to leave themselves so open. But, you know, they can still obviously retain their League One status. I think they'll win the game, and I think there'll be goals in it.
Absolutely. Sounds like a fair assessment of that. Extra time in a playoff game, eh? If only. Let's leave the playoffs alone and head across the pond to a league that we're obviously going to be focusing fully on for much of the summer, and that's the MLS. Those that follow the league in England will be enjoying two matches live on Sky. And the first one is the opening game on Saturday, the Western Conference clash between the last two MLS champions, Steve, Seattle Sounders and the Portland Timbers. Mixed form for both going into this game, I think it's fair to say. Do you give an edge to either?
I think both teams have been a bit off colour recently, really. I mean, Portland obviously started the season really well. They've dipped a bit. It was very worrying. They lost 4-1 at Montreal last week with their strongest possible team, even though they were down to 10 men for most of the encounter. But Portland have been known to kind of throw in a really slack performance away from home against, and I mean, really Montreal in a way were an insignificant opponent from a different conference. So I'm willing to let them off a little bit. This is a far bigger game, Cascadia Cup match. Probably the two teams that hate each other more in MLS than anyone else. You know, a lot of people see MLS as quite a friendly fan rivalry. They often sit next to each other, things like that. You know, when a goal's scored, you know, rival fans might bloody, you know, raise a glass to each other, bizarrely. It's all very friendly, isn't it? But this certainly isn't friendly. Neither team likes each other. And there's a real spice to this game. There'll be a full crowd, CenturyLink Field. I think even the top tier is actually open for this particular fixture, Kev, which it never is for any other Seattle Sounders games. So, yeah, really good atmosphere. I'm surprised they're odds on. I wouldn't be backing them at odds on because Portland are quite capable of turning it on when they're in the mood. Although they don't have a great record at this stadium, it must be said it's been a long time since the Timbers actually beat them in this particular encounter. But, yeah, I wouldn't personally be betting on the game because both are a little bit sort of off colour for my liking. But yeah, my main advice would not be to be taking Seattle odds on. But I know you've got a pretty concrete pick for the game, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would concur, actually, about not taking Seattle odds on. I know they won last week, but it's questionable what they beat in Real Salt Lake. And that ended a kind of spell of 4 games without a win, didn't it? A couple of those games, they got absolutely battered as well. Sporting Kansas City. And, of course, the Chicago Fire, where they got annihilated. So, you know, I'd be a bit concerned there. Share your sentiments with the Timbers, not the best on the road. But they have a go, don't they? That's what I like about the Timbers. That's why they're one of my favourite sides in the world to watch. They always have a go. Doesn't matter who they're playing, where they're playing. They get on the front foot and they go forward. You can see that, really, in their goals for and against. 12 games they've played, 22 for, 20 against. So in Portland Timbers matches this season, there's an average of 3.5 goals a game. It's not too dissimilar to Seattle Sounders, 16 goals for, 19 against. So you're just a shade under the 3 goals per game in that. And of course, 7 of those found their way into the Seattle net against Chicago and Sporting Kansas City prior to the win over Real Salt Lake. So I don't think either of these sides are reliable defensively, watertight defensively. I think whoever wins this is going to do it by attacking. They're not going to keep the opposition out, I don't think. It could turn into one of those crazy games, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3, something like that, particularly if there's an early goal, especially with the rivalry at stake. Neither will want to lose, will they? So I like over 2.75 goals in this game, Steve. Pretty strong on this one, actually. If someone like Montreal can bang 4 against Portland, you've got to think Seattle can find the net a couple of times. I don't think Seattle are going to keep a clean sheet here by any stretch of the imagination. I know they did last week, but Real Salt Lake, not really free scoring. Portland can be. In fact, the leading scorers in the Western Conference alongside Houston Dynamo. So the game just screams goals at me. I accept that neither side are in great form. I accept that it's a rivalry game, but sometimes you just got to play what's in front of you, and I just don't see either defence keeping the opposition out.
Well, yeah, you say that both aren't in form, and they're not in form because the defences are so crap right now. Yes, Seattle kept a clean sheet against Real Salt Lake, but I mean, Real Salt Lake, they're horrible at the moment, aren't they? They've got so many injuries, not playing well. It's interesting. There's a bit of fuel to the fire been added in ahead of this game. There's the Seattle manager's been having a go at Timber Joey, Kev. I don't know if you saw that story. But apparently Brian Schmetzer said, well, I don't like it. I can tell you that. I don't even know if he's a real lumberman or whether he's just a normal guy. So a really bizarre story in ahead of this game, that one.
And he wants to keep his distance when they go to Providence Park, don't they? Otherwise, the log might turn into part of his anatomy.
Exactly. I think that's. I think I'll be staying well clear of that side of the park. Yeah.
Yeah, there's people in the MLS to pick on, and he might not be the best one. There's 6 other games, Steve. We'll quickly run through them all. 6 other games on Saturday. We'll quickly run through them all in sort of kick-off order. We'll start in Vancouver, where the Whitecaps, on an upward curve, it has to be said, face DC United, who are very much the opposite. Got to be a home win, this one, hasn't it?
Yeah, quite fancy the home team in this one, must admit. DC United have been awful recently. Unfortunately, this is a matchup between 2 sides I can never get right. I really struggle to read them, especially DC United. I mean, like, United don't make any sense, do they? They go and play well at New England, got a draw there, they beat Atlanta away, and then they lose 3 home games against Montreal, Philadelphia, and Chicago. They didn't even score a goal in any of them, and they were terrible in all of them. So a lot of logic points to the Vancouver Whitecaps winning this game, especially as they're in quite good form at the moment. Robbo's got them playing pretty solid football in all areas of the park, really. So yeah, I would imagine a home win. Say at this point in time, I'm just not entirely sure what pick I'll be taking. I will probably be taking the home team in some form, but I know you're definitely very confident about Vancouver, aren't you? Yeah,
definitely on the straight win, Steve. They won 3 of the last 4 Vancouver. The game that they didn't win was a loss in Houston, where they actually gave a decent account of themselves. There's certainly nothing wrong with losing in Houston. Just about every team that's gone there have lost this season. I think it's only Minnesota who've taken any points away from that place. So nothing wrong with that. Plenty wrong with DC United. As you say, 3 games that they've lost on the bounce. Haven't scored in any of them. And really, if you look back at the game that they won prior to that, the game in Atlanta, I'm not actually sure how they won that game. It's just an amazing performance from the goalkeeper, because Atlanta were all over them in that game. If Atlanta had scored 6 or 7 in that match, nobody could have had any complaints. So, that doesn't bode well for DC United, I don't think. Vancouver are just starting to tick along quite nicely, aren't they? Like you say, starting to play some good football. I think they'll win this. I'm not going to get jiggy with any handicaps or anything. I'm just going to take the win. The odds are decent enough, around the 1.75 mark. That should be enough to just top up some nice profit on the weekend, hopefully.
Yeah, I see this like a 1-0, 2-0 sort of win, really. I don't think DC United will offer much. I say that they can be a really weird side. They're not showing anything at the moment. I would imagine at some point during the season they will randomly turn their form around, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. They're probably going to need to reinforce in the transfer window, I think, and get players back from injury, Kev.
Absolutely, yeah. Half an hour later, back in America, the New York Red Bulls take on the New England Revolution in an Eastern Conference clash. Something's up with the Red Bulls, isn't it? They're not firing. Well, I was going to say they're not firing on all cylinders. They're not firing on a cylinder, are they? It's
well, I'll tell
crazy.
you what. The Red Bulls haven't got any wings, have they? Right now, that's for sure. And you know what? You could do worse than back in New England Revolution here at 4.5 on the nose, Kev, because New York Red Bulls have lost 3 of the last 4. It should have been all 4. Toronto had a mysterious goal ruled out late last week. It looked a real favourable decision for the Red Bulls. They deserved to lose that. Of course, Toronto missed a penalty as well late on. They're terrible. I mean, anyone who watched the Galaxy match, they ripped the Red Bulls to pieces in that first half. It could have been 4-5-0 by half time. And to be honest, there's been something up with the Red Bulls all year, haven't they? Even in the matches they've won, they haven't looked very good. I wouldn't quite have the bollocks to play a full bet on the Revolution plus a half though, Kev, because they're just not a very trustworthy team. So, you know, they could easily play well and somehow lose. So I'm not going to stake anything big on this, but go on, I will flag up a tip on the Revs just to win the match outright. 4.50, smaller stake. Wouldn't surprise me if they won.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you. I was tempted to back them myself. The only thing that put me off is they're yet to win away from home. But like you say, I mean, I dare say they've not played anyone as rank as New York Red Bulls. You know, they score goals, don't they? That's the one thing you can say about the Revolution. You know, 20 goals in 12 games, that's a decent effort by anyone's standards. Combine that with the Red Bulls, who've only got 13 and have shipped 19. And that's kind of the problem for the Red Bulls, really, isn't it? Obviously, Dax McCarty's gone to Chicago and he's kind of left the defence exposed. And they're regularly getting run over, really. Like you say, Toronto should have won that game last week. They pretty much did in all bar scoreline, didn't they? So, yeah, I wouldn't put anyone off of backing the Revolution there. I have to say that's probably a decent shout for a few coins. And another away side who must have every chance, the Sporting Kansas City, Steve. It's a bottom against top clash in the Western Conference when they head to Colorado Rapids, who are rapidly losing touch with the playoff race in that conference.
I've got this could actually be a 0-0 draw. The matchups between these two, they're both quite defensive minded, and maybe no goal scorer might be worth a go. It's not a great price. I think the goal line for this game is 2.0, which doesn't at all surprise me. Look, Colorado, I'm not really going to take an awful lot from their last 2 defeats because they're horrible away from home. They beat San Jose Earthquakes 3-0. That was back on the 13th of May. That was their last home match. They were much improved in that fixture. So if they can replicate that sort of display, then maybe they could go okay. The Sporting Kansas City, something's gone a bit off for them last 3 or 4 games. Even that win they had against Seattle, it was pretty lucky. Played an awful first half. Nothing would surprise me here too much unless it was like a thrilling 2 or 3 all draw. I think it'll be a low scorer. I wouldn't want to get involved there, Kev. Don't know about you.
No, I agree. Sporting Kansas City, just 1 win in the last 4. If there was a little bit more form about them, I'd have taken them. I really don't rate the Rapids. Haven't rated them all season. Certainly don't now, but definitely a game to leave alone. I suspect the next one is to Minnesota United against Orlando City. Orlando obviously going to the game off the back of a bit of a shellacking by David Villa and co. Last weekend. Minnesota lost to Los Angeles, didn't they? But they gave a really decent account of themselves in the second half of that game. Can they sneak a win against Orlando?
Yeah, there's a temptation for me to back them, Minnesota. I think they're quite a good price, -1/4 handicap. But sometimes I'm like, well, what's the point of backing them on a -1/4? Because they don't go for draws, do they? They go all or nothing. You know, if it was last 10 minutes and it was level, they would throw everyone forward. A point's no good for Minnesota. They're not bothered about that. So they tend to either win or lose matches at the moment. They played well, haven't they, against Toronto and LA Galaxy, against some good players. So that's very encouraging. But they do tend to find ways to lose games, even when they play well, and that's always a concern to me. Orlando have gone way off form. No winning 5. The goals have started to be conceded. think a lot depends what sort of form Jonathan Spector's in. From what I've heard, he's been playing a little bit hurt recently. He was rested out of a couple. So when their key man at the back isn't operating on full capacity, that's a big concern to me. And they're having to go into their main weapon, which is obviously Larin up front, Kaká scoring goals again. I'm not at this point in time. I wouldn't be willing to tip anything, but when I actually look at it in detail, maybe I will be too tempted by Minnesota, and I will back them. But they're risky play because, I say they are literally all or nothing. You might be better off backing them straight on the nose.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Actually, both sides are, aren't they? They've both only drawn 2 games this season. It'll be interesting to see if Minnesota have got the edge there. Obviously, Adrian Heath, former Orlando manager, he should know the kind of movements that Kyle Larin and Kaká like to make. You'd think he'd get someone to kind of block them off, wouldn't you? Maybe a little bit of inside knowledge might benefit Minnesota in that game.
Yeah, and Heath will be motivated to actually get the win against them too. So, yeah, that's a pretty good point you make. He will have some tactics how to contain Orlando, and he does have some better defensive players at his disposal now. They have been better since Cronin and Birch were traded to the club, and their defence is no longer as shocking as it once was. And if their defence still was bad, I would be on the overs all day here. But Minnesota are no longer a guaranteed over. I would rather, if I was to take anything, it would be Minnesota in some form.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly wouldn't disagree with that. Orlando gone right off the ball recently. Another side who were, shall we say, off the boil, Real Salt Lake. They play host to Philadelphia Union, who finally seems to have found their mojo. They've won their last 4, amazingly. Having earlier in the season looked like they couldn't win a game if their lives depended on it. Not only have they won their last 4, but they've won them with the concession of just 1 goal. Is that winning run going to continue, or can Salt Lake get something?
I think Real Salt Lake are a mess this year. They're in transition. They've got a new coach. They've got about 20 players injured or affected in some way, literally. They've got players away on international duty. You can't be betting on their games until you know their lineup. Really, I wouldn't be surprised if the Union actually made it 5 in a row. It's incredibly. I don't think they've ever won 4 in a row, Kev. It's remarkable. I mean, they were terrible a few weeks ago, but they're a big confidence team, and obviously at the moment they're playing really well. So I would, you've got to side with them rather than Real Salt Lake. I think you couldn't be backing Real Salt Lake with stolen money, could you, at the moment? But it's a tough place to go. Bit of altitude there. And obviously, sometimes when you're away from home against a team from the opposite conference, teams can get it in their heads that it doesn't matter as much. And everyone's kind of waiting for Philly to throw in a shocker. It nearly happened last weekend. Actually, I thought they were crap against Colorado. They were lucky to win that game, and they weren't facing much on that day. Colorado didn't field a very good 11. So I think Philly got away with that one. If they play like that again, then Real Salt Lake might get something. I'm not interested in getting involved in this game at all.
Yeah, it's not a game for me either, to be fair. In all seriousness, Philadelphia are going to start to get a nosebleed in this winning run, aren't they? So, I think I'll leave that alone. 2 sides who will be expecting to be very competitive when the playoffs come around, particularly in the Western Conference, are San Jose Earthquakes and Los Angeles Galaxy, and they're the last 2 teams to meet each other on Saturday evening. Galaxy have suddenly found some form, haven't they? But this is a pretty tough-looking test for them.
Yeah, the California Classico, this game, Kev. Really big match. Strong rivalry between the 2 teams, and historically they play out really close games. There's not usually many goals involved when these 2 face each other. And San Jose have had so many 1-1 draws at home. I could see something sort of similar again. They're not a team I like getting involved in very often. At the moment, they're quite an annoying side. Whenever I back them, they tend to either draw or fail. And when they go against them, they can sometimes produce a decent performance out of nowhere. They beat Dallas last week. It was a very fluky win. Didn't deserve it. But at the end of the day, it's a 1-0 win in the book, and that's going to do them the world of good, isn't it? If they can beat them, then they'll believe they can beat anyone. Galaxy are just starting to play well again. But look who they've beaten. Red Bulls and Minnesota, who who do have a tendency to leave themselves wide open, don't they? I don't think San Jose will. The Earthquakes, give them a bit of respect last week. They defended bloody well. The goalkeeper had a great game as well. And I think they'll sit quite deep here. They'll force Galaxy to make mistakes. So, if I had to... I think a draw is on the cards. Maybe a 1-1 draw, even a 0-0 if it goes really tight. There's always an atmosphere here. No one wants to lose the game, and that's the sort of thing that will happen. Could be worth looking at under 2.5 goals, actually, this sort of game. But the goal line, the bookies aren't taking any chances. Tricky one to get involved in, Kev. Happy to leave this one alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to Sunday then, Steve. 2 matches there. The first of them is one game that isn't going to end 0-0. I think it's fair to say. 3 weeks ago, New York City beat Atlanta United 3-1 at Yankee Stadium. The 2 sides meet in Atlanta on Sunday evening, live on Sky for those in the UK. Is it fair to just expect goals again?
It's a very clear answer that yes. I mean, it's a no-brainer bet, over 3.25 goals. There's not really much I need to say here. For anyone who knows these 2 teams, they're just constantly going for it, attacking, left, right and centre. I think there's going to be tons of chances. We saw the reverse fixture in New York, ended 3-1. Could have ended literally anything, couldn't it? 5-3 or whatever. There's so many opportunities. I think both teams are going to play well too. I think both teams will really raise the level. They want to. I just got a feeling there's a bit of rivalry here actually. Both kind of play in the same way, don't they? And they want to be the top dog in this conference because, all right, Toronto at the moment, they look like the best team in the East, but they play in a completely different style to New York City and Atlanta. These are the 2 flair boys. And, it's obvious pick, over 3.25 goals. Don't know who's going to win. It could end absolutely anything. 2-2, 3-2, 2-1, 3-2 either way. But, yeah, I think over 3.25 looks a pretty sensible call, Kev.
Yeah, I would echo that. For my money, we've got 2 of the best players in MLS on show in this game. Miguel Almiron showed just how good he was against Houston last week, didn't he? David Villa has been doing that ever since he came to the MLS. Those 2 alone will make this game well worth watching. But the support cast is pretty decent as well. So, I would agree. Both like to press high up the field and get in the opposition's box and score goals. So, absolutely fair enough. The final game this weekend, Steve, we'll see Cowboy hats at the ready as FC Dallas take on Houston Dynamo in a Texan derby. You've got a couple of picks for the game. It has to be said, Houston, good side at home, wretched away from home. Is that going to continue?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say Houston, they've got a problem, haven't they, away from home. Played 5, lost 5, scored 3, conceded 14. They're not good away from home. Actually, I wouldn't take an awful lot of note of that, though, here, because this is obviously a sort of a local derby game, Texan derby. Big rivalry. I think it's rivalry week full stop in MLS. They do this 2 or 3 times a year. Really spicy contest. Dallas lost the last 2 games for the first time in over a year, but I wouldn't take too much out of the defeat at Chicago in midweek. They only started 3 first-team players, and quite a lot of them were actually left at home, obviously preparing for this game, which is a bigger contest for them. I think they're the better team than Houston. The Dynamo are not very good away, and I certainly think Dallas will win. That's my first pick. I think take them on a -75 handicap because Houston usually lose by at least a couple of goals on the road. And I think over 2.75 goals as well. The way these 2 teams, there's plenty of attacking potential. Dallas do have that tendency to go into their shell a bit in some home games. They're happy just to win sort of 2-0, then they'll just pass the ball around. But they can't do that in this game because the fans will demand that they keep going forward. It's their biggest rivals. They don't just want to beat Houston. They want to crank up the goals against them. But I think Houston probably will contribute to the scoring. They've got enough individual talent to score a goal or 2, haven't they, here? So I might call something like 3-1 Dallas, and I think back the home team and the overs.
Yeah, they do have goals in them, Houston. That's one thing you can say about them. They're quite pleasing on the eye as well, aren't they? Yeah, play a nice, attractive style to watch, which is fair enough. That's the MLS this week covered. Hopefully we've given you opinions, and obviously we've given you plenty of bets for the MLS. We will finish this podcast by quickly nipping up to Scandinavia for a quick look at Norway's top flight. There's a 4 round of fixtures this weekend, the bulk of which are on Sunday. I'm not going to go through all of them, Steve, but we will pick out the 2 games in which you've got bets in. We'll start in Lillestrøm, where you're quite keen on the visitors.
Yeah, it's the one league I don't mind backing away teams, actually, because there's quite a high percentage of away victories often. Look, I don't rate Lillestrøm at all as a team. They somehow drew 1-1 at Rosenborg last week, and they actually played quite well in that game. But there's something going on with the Rosenborg at the moment. They're not at all in any sort of form. And I think Lillestrøm enjoyed being the underdog here on that occasion. But for some reason, some mysterious reason, they're odds on to beat Tromsø. And Tromsø are clearly better than them, in my personal opinion. They're a good side. They should have more points than they've got. The only reason they haven't got more is they don't always finish their chances that well. But you don't need to score many goals to beat Lillestrøm, really. It's very rare that the home team bag more than 1 goal. In fact, it's only happened once all year, I think. So, I think take the visitors on a +1/2 handicap. They can at least draw this game. And in all reality, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually won it. Mysterious odds for me, Kev, here. It's completely the wrong line.
Fair enough. And keeping with your theme of backing away sides in Norway, you're taking another one.
Yeah, I'm taking Stabæk +0.75. These odds don't actually surprise me because Molde are obviously highly rated team on reputation, so it's understandable that they are a short price. But I don't think it's a value price. Anyone thinking of backing the home team, just look at what they've been doing recently. They've lost 3 of their last 4, only 1 win in their last 6, which was a fluky injury time victory last weekend. They haven't been playing very well. So if they keep playing like this, Stabæk will go all over them. They're a really good away team, Stabæk. They've got the type of players who can counter-attack well, good technical players, and they've got the big lad up front who netted another goal on Monday night, and he extended his lead at the top of the goal scorers chart. So, I think Stabæk, I actually think Stabæk will win the game. I wouldn't want to put anyone off backing them at a big price, but obviously the sensible play is to take them on a +75 handicap. So that's the selection.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair enough. I won't get you to pronounce the fella's name. I'm not that unkind. We'll just call him the big fella up front, which is absolutely fair enough. Okay, so that's covered all of the weekend football that we cover. Obviously, we've got the cup final that we've covered. We've covered the playoffs in France, MLS in full, and a couple of bets in Norway. Thanks for your opinions and reflections, Steve. Much appreciated as always. Those of you that enjoy our football podcasts, you've got 7 days to wait for the next one. We will be back next weekend with MLS and other leagues that are going on at that time. So until then, Steve, it's adios from me.
Yep, enjoy this one, Kev. Take care, and we'll see everyone again soon.